Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. That is right, we are live on today's Kev Baker Show. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, as I like to say, wherever you are on this crazy, crazy ball of madness that we call home, planet Earth. A big warm welcome to today's show. And of course, we're going out on the home of the Kev Baker Show, Truth Frequency Radio, TFRlive.com. And may I just thank Mr. Geo and Cherie for all of the hard work that they've been doing to get our fine #1 network back up and running. And it's great to see everyone coming back onto the chat room over there as well at TFRlive.com/chat. And if you didn't know by now, I am Kev Baker, and I come to you from Smart City, Glasgow, under the Data Dome, indeed. And we're able to get our signal all the way around the world, from America to Australia, and just about everywhere in between in this world and the next, thanks to TFRlive.com. Today, of course, we're going out on Disco and on YouTube too, because we have got one of our favourite regular guests back on the show. He is the hospital porter who had the foresight and the foreknowledge to set up something called Hospital Porters Against the New World Order. Yes, indeed. He's a man that gets into conspiracy, myths, UFOs, aliens, cryptids, you name it. Ben Emlyn-Jones is usually on it. He's an author as well. Covers disclosure in his novel series. Check that out. I'll get him to give you the website. He does his own radio stuff. He's speaking at a conference coming up soon. I'm telling you, he's one of the busiest workers over here in the UK when it comes to all of the content that we love. So, Ben, it's that time of the month again, man. Can you believe it? Here we are, November. Only one more show to go this year.
Oh, God, yeah. It's this year has gone so quick. I think the reverse quickening that's supposed to have happened hasn't happened. But notional time is accelerating. This is the quickest year I've known, definitely. I've got to ask you a crucial question, Kev. Did Bill Gates enjoy his deep-fried Mars bar?
Well, I have it on from a reliable source, an unnamed whistleblower, that in fact Greta enjoyed them so much that she ate both.
Well, the one thing's for certain, she's going to be producing a lot of methane hydrate, so they should tax her, I think.
500 meters, bro. She made it within 500 meters of me, and she lived to tell the tale. I'm surprised. I'm surprised, man. Yeah.
Oh, cool.
You should have been up in Glasgow for that, dude. It was cool. We had the Extinction Rebellion mob. We had 100,000 plus march. We had Nicola Sturgeon taking a Guinness Book of Record amount of selfies. Oh, it was great, dude, honestly.
I would have been curious to see it, even though I'm very critical of the whole institution that was there.
Actually, quite disappointing when I compare it to other years in other locations. Remember, we had Moncton parachuting into one of them. That's a memorable thing. We've had standoffs before, the Battle of Seattle. Over here, it was very, very well received, I thought. Very little trouble indeed.
There was no real reports of any violence. I mean, it just seemed people just went along there and made a lot of noise, dressed up in their strange costumes,
Very strange
women
costumes.
with the red dresses and the white faces and things like that.
Can I ask you, Ben, do they terrify you as much as they terrify me?
They do look very spooky, don't they, those ladies? They're part of a theatrical troupe.
Did you just identify them as ladies? You haven't asked them.
Oh, sorry.
You don't know? I live in a pronoun wonderland. You daren't identify anything. No.
Exactly. Well, whoever they, she, he, they, or it are.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Yeah. Oh, sorry, I shouldn't call you sir.
I got myself out of trouble there. You were about to get your video flagged. They are quite weird. I saw them in Oxford once, and I don't understand the point of what they're doing. I mean, Extinction Rebellion is a very strange organisation. It seems to be very well funded, even though they hired an entire church hall in Oxford, one of the biggest.
They look like they didn't charge an entrance. They should be appearing in The Shining. That's where they should be. They should be in a horror movie. Yes, indeed. So, Ben, what have you been up to since we last spoke, man? Can I ask you, has there been any recurrence or anything similar to the lost time that you talked about when you were on before?
There hasn't. There really hasn't.
Okay.
I wrote to Tesco's customer care line. I just wrote to them and asked them about the CCTV. They never got back to me. It's just, I should have pursued this actually, because now it's over the time limit. But I didn't get a reply from them, and other things sort of came up. So I sort of forgot about it. But nothing like that has happened since. So long as it doesn't happen again, I'm not going to really dwell on it. But it's sort of at the back of my mind, I'm still wondering what happened. I still don't have any answers. I'm still curious. You know what I mean?
I think it's only natural that there's a curiosity there, Ben. I don't think you'll ever lose that.
Yeah, it's like the thing in my arm. I told you about that. We were talking about the thing in my. I've not really pursued it. I mean, I think deep down subconsciously, I know that a lot of people will think this, and they're probably right, that maybe without even knowing it myself, that there's an element of fear to it. I'm concerned about what might be discovered.
Yep, there's nothing wrong with that, dude.
You know
That's
what I mean?
entirely understandable. And for somebody like you that researches this kind of stuff, I mean, I would imagine you've got the same kind of rule of thumb as I do. Neither me or you want to become the story, right? We cover other people's stories.
Exactly, yeah. I mean, I did have a meeting with a chap actually a couple of weeks ago, and I specifically wrote to him because he's a guy I know who has had these experiences, and I just wanted to talk to him. And we did meet up in a pub and have a couple of drinks and just discuss the whole thing. And he was very helpful. He gave me some advice on how I could maybe see like a hypnotherapist or someone like that. He recommended a couple, and I these things, you can't enter into them lightly, Kev. I'll have to think that over. I really will.
No, absolutely, dude. I mean, I remember we covered, seems like an unrelated topic, but in a way it's not. And we were covering targeted individuals at one point. And I know Johnny Whistles, he went to meet with a couple in Glasgow that felt that similar things were happening to them. Not nice, dude. Not nice. I wouldn't like it to be me,
Yeah, there are people who come under that category of targeted individuals. I've known a couple of them. I do believe it is real what happens to them. I know a guy who's got so many implants in them. He's almost like got more implants than he has bones. And these have been detected using medical imagery. That's Kieran Lee Perrin. However, I myself, I'm not that concerned. I mean, I suppose because I have seen people who have the kinds of experiences I've had literally every week. You know what I mean? The one where they have missing time is almost a regular thing. That hasn't happened to me. I suppose I don't want to. I'd be frightened if I did something that rocked the boat. You know what I mean? I don't want to sound like a coward, because I'm not. I'm just.
You're far from that, sir. Far from that.
Thanks. I'm just. You know what I mean? It's just, this is alarmed me. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. I can see it alarms you. So let's take it away from there, and let's, first of all, on today's show, drill down on what we said on the title. Are we in the days of disclosure? Now, I had a brilliant conversation with Stephen Cambion, the truth seeker, the other night. More about the unfortunate underbelly of ufology. But today, to neutralise that out and to get right into the good UFO woo, I have got Ben here with me. And Ben, there's been a lot of people talking about UFOs that make me sit up and take notice. We had one of our good friends of the channel, Jules, the other day. I was gaming over on Discord, and she informed me that Clyde Lewis had been talking about a NASA individual who had been talking about UFOs, and I notice you've got it on your pile for today. So, talk to the audience. What's going on here, man?
This is what is really, really strange. I don't have Steve's cool sunglasses, unfortunately, but I'll try and do as good a job as he does.
He's got one of the most infectious laughs on YouTube as well. And listen, I don't agree with Stephen on everything.
Yeah,
I think he does a thankless job trying to police the community in some ways, holding people to task,
Yeah, but I'll try to stick to be as factual as possible.
You're okay,
when it
Ben.
comes
You
to
weren't.
these sort of
Your
things.
name
Yeah.
isn't on there. I've not seen you. You're okay. You're not
He's
on
never mentioned
Cambian's
me before,
radar.
no.
No, you're a good guy, man. You're a good guy.
Thanks. But this is the answer to the question is: are we in the days of disclosure? I think the answer has to be yes. Now, this doesn't mean oh, it's going to happen next week or next year, and we're just going to have complete transparency in one go. It's more likely to be a tortured, drawn-out process. Unfortunately, I think the scenario I depict in my novel, Roswell Rising, a novel of disclosure, and its two sequels, Roswell Revealed and Roswell Redeemed, is probably quite accurate. However, the reason I say yes is because every time I look at the news, or I look at some piece of something on the internet, I see a UFO story. I mean, you've just sent me one literally hot off the press tonight about what looks like some kind of flap going on in France. The word they use is frenzy. We also have like this guy. This is what's his name? Senator
Bill Nelson.
Bill Nelson. Yeah, he's the head of NASA. He's an elected politician. He's also the head of NASA, and he was doing an interview. He was doing an interview with the Virginia Center for Politics, and he happened to mention something really quite incredible. He just came out. It just sort of came out the blue. The thing did actually. The conversation did actually move in that area. But he said something that he really went further than he needed to. When he replied, he did say something that other people have said before, John Ratcliffe and people like that, and Harry Reid. But he went further. He actually said, he mentioned something. He's aware of some 300 sightings that have been reported by the UAPTF. Now that's twice the number that was mentioned in the summary that was published on June the 25th. This means that he must have been referring to what's in the classified annex, because as a member of the legislature, he will have received a copy of the classified annex. All of them, I think there's 540 of them, the 100 senators and all the representatives in the U.S. federal government have received a copy of this. I mean, it is only a matter of time until more and more is leaked. I mean, Steve Bassett said this. There's bound to be some kind of leak from this, and this is a kind of leak. I don't know if he intended to do it. He didn't. He just happened to mention some 300 sightings. I don't think he'll get into trouble over this. But he did also reveal that there's telemetry. We've heard this before. He actually confirmed that is radar, electronic support measures, and other sensors on board the ships and the aircraft, confirming the presence of these UAPs. And the primary reason I think that this hasn't been divulged is not because of the UAP context, but more because it might give away some of the capabilities of those ships and those aircraft, which are very, very highly classified. He describes one of the indicators listed by Lou Elizondo. There's 5 indicators. I think it's a lift with. I think there's lift without any means, such as wings or rotors or envelope. There's extreme maneuverability, transmedium travel. I can't remember the whole list, but he mentions this. He said that they do exhibit extreme speed and maneuverability. Well, that is 2 of the indicators that Lou Elizondo lists. And then he says, I hope it's not an adversary on Earth that has this kind of technology. And this is often what is suggested, that these are actually aircraft built by a nation. Russia and China are usually mentioned because they're regarded as the fellow superpowers in this new multipolar world. It could be another country. It doesn't have to be those. It could be a smaller country. But the good news is, for anyone worried about that, there's actually no evidence that any foreign nation has produced aircraft like this. None whatsoever.
Yeah.
So what does that leave? The process of elimination means he's more than suggesting that there's these are non-human construction. There's artificial objects of non-human construction involved here. Now someone else goes on to that as well. I'll come to that in a minute. But someone else mentions something similar to that, which is even more candid. Now I don't know if this is a verbal blunder by Bill Nelson. I don't know. But it seems unlikely he would have done that, because he's very, very compass mentis. I mean, he's an old guy. He was appointed by Joe Biden. This doesn't mean he shares his president's mental condition. It doesn't. He's obviously with it. And he also said something else very, very interesting. He said that NASA is involved with UFO studies. Now, it's not just the Department of Defense, it's NASA as well. Now, this is something that's always been denied beforehand. NASA has always had this kind of cuddly image. It's always been these nice smiling astronauts. It's very much a public outfit with a lot of public, you know, a lot of fame and fortune and public attention focused on NASA. It's got this reputation for transparency. Although NASA has been involved in classified operations before. They've launched spy satellites from the space shuttle, for example. This is always generally overlooked. And now he's saying, no, NASA is involved with the UFO studies. So if NASA is involved with UFO studies, what does that mean? It means possibly that they're concerned about sightings in space.
Yeah, and I would imagine it's that compartmentalized. Like you say, they might just be investigating, for example, I don't know. We've seen how often they've cut the ISS feed, right? When something appears there that's questionable. So they could be investigating that. And if NASA ever came forward with the disclosure file, I would forgive everyone around the planet for being very skeptical. Because it's NASA, right? Nobody trusts NASA.
Well, let's have a look at my T-shirt, Kev. I don't know if it was. It says there's a little UFO there, and it disappears sometimes.
Wow,
it says,
it's like you teleported.
Told you so. It's like you can't see
teleported through the Tesla tower, man.
Yeah, you can't actually see it because the Tesla tower appears when my face is not there. But it actually says underneath the little flying saucer, "Told you so."
There you go. Yeah.
So yeah, that's kind of my position at the moment. That's why I'm wearing this T-shirt. But it's there's been many instances. For example, James Blaha, who was a space shuttle pilot. I think it was 1996 or sometime in the mid to late 90s. I can't remember the mission, but he was up on the space shuttle, and there's a published recording of his voice. It sounds a bit like his voice that was picked up by an amateur radio ham, and it says, "Houston, this is Discovery. We have the alien spacecraft under observance." It's quite a famous one, that. You probably heard it, Kev.
Yeah.
It does sound like him, actually. Now, what I suspect happened was that his duty at that point was to switch to the encrypted channel. There's an open channel, which of course is the public face of NASA, where people can watch the live streams and things like that. And there is an encrypted side to it as well. Now, if Nelson is telling the truth, there's no reason to disbelieve him that NASA is involved in UFO studies. I think maybe we got a glimpse of that at that point. It's possible Blaha let that slip before he flicked the switch to the encrypted channel by mistake. If that indeed is James Blaha, and this is not some hoax, it does sound like him. I've listened to him talking, and it sounds very much like his voice.
Yeah, I think they've seen stuff when they went up to the moon the first time as well, dude. I think they've seen stuff then, you know.
There's many reports from all the astronauts on the Apollo program of strange things. I mean, Buzz Aldrin has stated that during the Apollo 11 mission, he saw something accompanying the command module, and he and Neil Armstrong and Mike Collins looked out the window for a while, and they actually radioed NASA and just asked them to confirm the location of the rocket booster, which they just jettisoned a rocket booster, and they said that's over 300 miles away, guys. And so they wanted just to eliminate that possibility. Now, Aldrin said they didn't say anything else, or indeed they didn't say anything else, or possibly even back in the 60s they had encrypted channels by which they could report this subject, because reports of UFOs in space go back right to the beginning of the space race. People such as Colonel Gordon Cooper in, I think it was 1964, he set an endurance record in space. There's radio reports where he reports what he calls bogeys, and then later on he said, yes, I saw strange things in space. There is Gennady Strakalov, who was I don't know, they called them cosmonauts. They've got a different word for it. It's the same thing. He was an astronaut aboard the Salyut 1 space station, I believe, the first actually orbiting space platform, and he saw strange things up in space too. This was right in the early days.
I've always wondered, you know, if we would get the Chinese or the Russians disclosing first. Always wondered that.
I think it's actually much more likely in the US. My money is on Russia. If I had to put a bet on William Hill, it would be Russia, because Russia really seems to have it seems to be operating quite independently of the other dark forces controlling much of this world. That doesn't mean it's completely free of influence, but it does seem to be much more recalcitrant and so more of a loose cannon than, for example, the UK or USA.
Certainly ain't going to be the UK, right? I mean, dang. We keep it sealed up more than what Area 51 is. We're terrible. We ain't disclosing nothing.
Oh, one of my favourite videos I've ever done on HPANWO TV. I did a comedy one right back on New Year's Day this year, and it's just I pretend to be Boris Johnson doing a UFO disclosure speech, and I'm really pleased with that video. I think it's so funny.
I think we'll need to go and watch that one. Yes, indeedy.
I'll send you a link. I'm so proud of it. I'm very proud of that video.
Dude, I mean, there's not even the slightest inclination that we're going to jump on the whole UAP ATIP kind of disclosure that we're seeing over the pond, right?
Absolutely not. I mean, there's been not a peep out of our own government, the UK, rather not the Westminster government or any of the devolved governments. Nicola Sturgeon hasn't said a word. I mean, they're actually the people I find they're very tiresome, I think, and very untrustworthy people generally across the board. And
Nicola Sturgeon discloses she will declare the pronouns of the alien first, and she will send a selfie. It'll be declared by selfie. Yes, she'll do it on Instagram. You know.
I think she'll probably retire. I think most of them will retire because they won't have a single thing to say about this. See, they won't have there'll be others that will. Who will have
we've got a super chat there.
Sidvich donated 20 Norwegian kroner through super chat. I want to land in Greenland. Tall Nordic has spoken.
Oh, the Nordics.
Oh, thanks.
Yes,
that's
indeed.
a good one.
My favourite classification of the aliens. You know, before we go to break, Ben, I'm not sure if you've been watching this, but I like to see what programming is out there going alongside the official disclosure we're seeing in the mainstream. There's a TV show with a lot of money being spent on it, and it's called Invasion, and it's on Apple TV, and this is a 10-part series. I think it's about 7 episodes in. But it shows you how a version of disclosure, alien visitation may happen around the planet. And I don't know, dude, it just, when I see that happening, the same time, well, we've got all the kind of NASA people coming out, as we'll see after the break as well. We've got other high-ranking people in the US talking about this. I don't know, dude, I'm very open to something being out there, you know. What say you, though?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's undeniable. There are artificial objects of non-human construction interacting with this planet. Absolutely, absolutely. There's also the cover-up, which we've talked about many times. The cover-up, I think, is now wearing thin. I think it's going to be increasingly difficult to maintain it, and that's a good sign because I think if that particular cover-up falls, probably cover-ups of a lot of other things will fall as well. So I'm encouraging to see where this goes. I'm quite excited to see where this goes, and I do think this, with increasing numbers of sightings, with more and more people reporting these things, with increased public interest, I think that everything looks quite rosy, to be honest. Every time people think this is just going to go away and it's going to just fade away and it's going to be forgotten, something happens. Something happens that brings it back
right,
up to the surface.
And the one in France, it's been covered by mainstream news. It was seen Montpellier, Marseille, all the way along. A lot of different videos, multiple witnesses. Hard to make out what it is. A lot of people have said, it's just a drone with a light on the bottom. But I don't know. It's unidentified to me. It looks like it's doing things that it shouldn't be doing. When you put it in the context of what our avionics, our aviation, I don't know, Ben. I don't know. I just think things are all starting to take an uptick in UFO land, man.
They are indeed, and I mean, this footage unfortunately is very rarely of good quality. UFO footage tends not to be. There's another famous one that's just come out, which was somebody's doorbell camera that picked up what looks like a trio of lights, or big white lights flying across the sky, and it could be some kind of TR-3B or some kind of triangular object of some variety. At the same time, it could be
this thing as well. This donut-shaped thing over Switzerland. It was just the other day. It's not as, it puts me in mind of the Norway spiral, but it's not the Norway spiral, but it's something very, very similar. Now, we're on the break, ladies and gentlemen, so we'll be back after these short messages. Don't go anywhere.
I don't know what all the conflict is about. Grab my things. It's time to go now.
Now, we'll be back in 3 minutes, folks. So, Ben, if you need to go and get a drink or anything you need to do, brother, anyone out there, please hit like, please hit share, and we'll be back before you know it, folks. Don't go anywhere.
Okay.
We're just getting ready to go back to the network with Ben Emlyn-Jones. Good to see Sidvich out there, the Wookiee Oxfordshire man. Stimulate. Yes, indeedy. ZX. The Gherkins, all the way over there in Poland.
You are now tuned into the Truth Frequency.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Second part of today's show with Ben Emlyn-Jones. Ben, let people know where they can follow you, how they can keep up with your blogging, where you're going to be talking. You've got speaking engagements coming up. Man, you're the busiest guy in the UK.
I'm glad to say I'm getting back into that. Yes, I wasn't booked for quite a long time, but I have now been booked to speak. On the 6th of January next year, I will be at the Swansea UFO Network. If you go to sufon.co.uk, all the details are there. I've also, on the HPANWO Voice blog, I put a notice with all the details. If you want to know more about me, well, I've got quite a lot of things you can look at, different websites. I've got a huge Google footprint, as I say. But if you just search for HPANWO, that's HPANWO, which stands for Hospital Porters Against the New World Order, you will find me. And I also do read my books. I've got I've got 3 books, the Roswell trilogy by Ben Emlyn-Jones. You'll find them on Amazon and all good bookshops. If you like the UFO subject and you like all the things that Kev and I talk about, I think you'll enjoy these books.
Any plans? Are we any closer to getting a new book?
I'm writing one. I actually finished the 5th chapter on a new book I'm writing called The Obscurati Chronicles. And I've actually published the first 4 chapters already. So if you want to check those out, they're on Ben's bookcase, panwo-bb.blogspot.co.uk. And they're when the book comes out, the first 4 chapters might be different because I'll go back and revise them. But for the time being, they're there for you to read with illustrations. So I hope you enjoy them.
Was that the Obscurati Chronicles? I like that, dude. Give us an
Well,
idea. Give us an idea. What was it kind of about? Where are we going with this one?
It's very similar to the Roswell trilogy thematically. It's about it's the kind of things we talk about on this show. It's another alternative history story, except I started the story much earlier, back in 1918 at the end of World War I. So it's going to be slightly different in that respect.
Sounds very, very good indeed. And you mentioned the Swansea UFO event you're going to be talking shortly. Yeah. Any plans? Do you know what you're going to be talking about there?
Yes, I'm going to be doing a talk all about skeptics.
Oh.
Now, this is the skeptics always talk about us. Mick West and people like him do absolute dissections of every single thing we say, do, and think. But it's about time we return the favor. So I have done a complete analysis of the skeptic movement from our side of the debate. So as far as I know, that's not many people have done that. There's a couple of, but I'm not completely unique, but I think mine is the most detailed and I think most comprehensive analysis of the skeptic movement that's ever been done. And I'm going to be presenting it as a lecture at the Swansea UFO Network.
Oh, that sounds very interesting. I look forward to hearing more about that once it's happened. So if we dive back into, are we in the days of disclosure? We covered before the break, we had the NASA individual who came out and talked about twice the amount of UAP incidents that were first disclosed when we got that report from Congress, giving us a little kind of hint at how many cases they're looking at in the classified pages. And if that was just the only person, well, that's okay. That would be interesting enough. But then we've got somebody else that's been talking or been asked about the alien question. Ben, who is this individual over here?
Avril Haines. Now, Avril Haines is the Director of National Intelligence. He's the most senior intelligence officer in the entire United States. She's the DNI is the executive supervisor of all the spy agencies of the United States. And she was appointed by Joe Biden, and she has been touring and doing several events. Now, what's interesting about this lady is she attended a public event at the Washington National Cathedral, a huge cathedral in Washington, D.C., and she was asked a question about UAPs. And bearing in mind, several other people were at this event, including Avi Loeb. So she was sharing a platform with Avi Loeb. And she answered, the bottom line is we don't understand everything we're seeing. There's always the question of, is there something else we simply do not understand that might come extraterrestrially? She actually said that word. Now, sure, other people within the government have said that. I mean, sort of the former DNA, in fact, her predecessor, John Ratcliffe, actually said something very similar back in March. But this is a completely different situation because she is the incumbent. So John Ratcliffe is a former. He had already been relieved of office by the time that he said these things. Avril Haines is actually she has been selected. She's actually on duty as the DNI when she said this. Now, that makes it very, very different, I think. And politically, it changes everything. I don't know if what she said was authorized by her administration. It may not be. Possibly she just said that off her own initiative, in which case I applaud her. I just hope she doesn't get into trouble. She might have to run away, but running away from Joe Biden wouldn't be terribly difficult, would it? However, it's my guess is that she was actually speaking in turn. She was actually speaking in turn with her administration's policy, even if it is like a covert policy. She could have said that deliberately because she was told to give certain clues out. The fact, simply sharing a panel with Avi Loeb, I think is a statement in itself. Avi Loeb, this so-called alien hunter, he's an astronomer from Harvard University, and occupies a very, very significant position in that elite university, the Ivy League, which is like Oxbridge here in this country. And he has put his reputation on the line to say that Oumuamua, this interstellar object, was actually artificial. And he's written a book which is very, very interesting indeed. Now, what's odd about all this is I kind of predicted this would happen. Well, I wasn't convinced with the argument that this was simply about to fade away. After the June 25th anti-climax, which it was a bit, a lot of people were saying, well, this is actually on its way out. John Greenwald was saying he doesn't think this is going to go much further. I said I wasn't so sure. Obviously, I hoped it wasn't. It appears I was right. I mean, I can. I've actually made a little graph, Kev. I'm just going to share with you, if that's all right. Okay. I traced the emergence of all kinds of things that have been happening since 2017, since the big reveal in 2017. And I worked out there seems to be some kind of schedule involved. I can't prove this. It may just be a statistical blip. However, it's I think it may not be. And part of statistics, analyzing statistics, is looking for repetition. And repetition or things fitting with a certain pattern. And I made a prediction that was falsifiable. Would something else happen according to my pattern? Now, if you look at this image, you'll see that it basically the red arrows on this image point to every major eventuality in the post-2017 new ufological thing, whatever you like to call it. After the first revelation in December 2017, there was a whole year or more where nothing really happened. But in 2019, it all kicked off again. And what I discovered was what looks like a regular pattern of events. I predicted that sometime in 2021, this was back when I was talking to Steve Bassett during the summer, I said that this was going to pick up again and it would happen in late autumn. Well, if you look at this picture here that I've got, you could add an extra arrow in November and it would fit in with the pattern that I discovered. Not provable, I know, Kev, but I think it indicates that possibly all this has been done according to some kind of schedule. I hope that's the case anyway. This is all organized. There's somebody directing. There's a master of ceremonies directing the process by which each revelation is given at a particular time.
I'm going to go way out there. It's going to go way out there, Ben. We're going to go way out there because I recently done a show about the war that nobody's talking about, or the most important war that's happening right now. And it was all based upon a video from Courtney Brown, the head of the Farsight Institute. And he was talking about how this planet has been under the control of the Reptilian/Orion Alliance, and there's another big group called them the Galactic Federation of Worlds. Not a blue chicken in sight, may I add, before people lose their mind.
The blue chickens.
But are you open to the idea that maybe the timetable's been set by someone else?
It's possible.
Something
I mean,
bigger. Are you
to
open to them maybe even working like that Courtney Brown idea? Elements of the government working with one faction, you've got the Navy working with another faction. Are you open to that kind of idea?
You know, I've not really looked into detail in what Courtney Brown's been talking about in this regard. However, based on what you've said, it's something that I am open to. I don't know specifically, but I am open to this. I know that there's lots of reports from people about extraterrestrials who have revealed themselves to certain people within the administration. Dwight Eisenhower is often mentioned. He had a meeting with a being Holloman Air Force Base. This has recently been dramatized into a very, very good feature film called The 11th Green, which I very much recommend. It's a film that could have been made for people like us. It really could. So, yeah, it's interesting that people talk about reptilians and different kinds of aliens. There's even people such as David Icke who say that reptilians are present within our society disguised as humans. And again, this is something I have to take seriously. I've met people who said this. I know so many people who've talked about this. Several authors have discussed this, not just David Icke. He's often credited with this in the discovery of this. He's actually not. I met a lady who, very, very ordinary lady at the Probe conference, who seems completely sort of average middle class, kind of slim person, well dressed with jewelry, who talked about her husband being a reptilian shapeshifter. And I listened to her, and I can't prove what she's not making up what she's saying, but it's quite extraordinary. It does make me wonder, Kev, because this is slightly off on a tangent, but it is related, because the Queen is the person most often famously nominated
Queenie
as
lizard breath. Blah, blah.
Yes. Well, she missed the
Can't believe it,
Remembrance
Ben.
Sunday.
I can't believe it's been years since we went full reptilian, man. It's been years.
About time we got back to it, Kev.
Been way
It
too
really is.
long. Yeah.
She's often mentioned as she's nominated as one, and to be honest, she's part of this Habsburg bloodline, which is said to be part of the Illuminati, and it all goes back to ancient Egypt and things like that. And she missed the Remembrance Sunday service at the Cenotaph this year. Now, she's never done that before, even before she was Queen. I think she attended regularly every year, I think. I can't, unless someone knows of another time she couldn't make it, but apparently she had a bad back. It's a bit Monty Python, that, isn't it? I didn't really, because I don't think the Queen is a militant trade unionist, so I can't really. When it says, "Oh, she's got a bad back," I can't help smiling and thinking, she didn't even turn up in a car or anything. She just
Catching
wasn't there.
flies, man. Catching flies.
Maybe is it possible she's like she can't hold her human form
That's what it is, dude.
for
That's
long
what it
periods
is.
of time, and she doesn't want to suddenly slip into lizard mode in front of thousands of people lined up in Whitehall.
We realise
And
we've been
everyone on
living
TV
in
as well.
We've been living in an episode of V all along.
Well, honestly, I mean, if she do that in front of a TV camera and a huge audience, that'd be one. I mean, it would be impossible to deny.
Ben,
wouldn't
at this point, anything could happen. Anything could happen. I am poised daily for something as bizarro land as that to happen. That's
But,
where we are now, right?
Yeah, I actually made a video just on HPANWO TV just a few days ago, and it's called UFO Disclosure 2021. It could happen any day, and when I say it could happen, I'm not just referring to a revelation about UFOs. I'm referring to almost any secret coming out. It literally could. We seem to be in some kind of era of novelty, to quote Terence McKenna, in which there's some chaos that's injected into this situation, which means the unexpected will happen, and that means that the Illuminati don't have complete control over the situation anymore.
I know, but then there's discerning what secrets are actually real and what ones are part of the fictive reality,
Oh, well, that's where we have to be very careful, don't we?
Yes.
You see, you mentioned this TV series Invasion. I've not seen that yet. But the word invasion, does it imply that there are hostile aliens invading the Earth? Is that the plot? Because that's the plot of many science fiction programs.
Yes, they're not very friendly, let's put it that way.
I'm curious to see it
They
because
don't come bearing gifts.
Right. See, alien invasion films and TV programs, they vary an awful lot in terms of intellectual content and technical quality.
Well, the money that's been spent on this, with it being Apple, it's not like they're short of a buck or two, so yeah, you can imagine.
I mean, there was one I particularly like is the Arrival, not to be confused with Arrival with Charlie Sheen. The Arrival is the one about multiple aliens, these big kind of a crescent-shaped craft floating down above certain spots on the Earth. The one with Charlie Sheen and the radio telescope, that's a different film altogether. That's Arrival. Yeah. Now, The Arrival is really, really good. I think it's the best one. But there seems to be more and more of them coming out. And some of them, like in the terms of the arrival, the aliens are kind of neutral in terms of what we never really discovered their true mission on Earth. Sorry for the spoiler, guys, if you've not seen it, but there's no final answers at the end of the film. However, there's also lots of other films where the aliens are distinctly hostile in terms of arrival. They're actually they have infiltrated this Earth. They've disguised themselves. If you mentioned the TV series V, which is based on an Arthur C. Clarke novel. The classic one, of course, is Independence Day, where these big spacecraft fly down and they start blowing everything up. I mean, it's weird because something else happened since we last did a show, which I think is very significant. The Washington National Press Club, which is one of the most prestigious media locations in the world, has hosted a third UFO-themed conference. Now, there's been two others before. The 2001 Disclosure Project press conference in May 2001, which was Dr. Stephen Greer and his Disclosure Project organised that. That's the one where Carol Rosin said, "The last card, the last card."
No, Ben, you should know I've got that one always queued up.
And the last card, the last card would be the extraterrestrial threat.
My favourite.
That was the one.
It's my favourite little snippet, definitely.
It was a very, very good conference, and her speech was by far the most interesting and the most relevant. There was another one, though, in 2013. There was the Citizen Hearing Initiative. Now, that was fascinating. That was a whole week, that was, and I watched it all live. I used to rush home from work, and luckily, because it was in the eastern United States, I used to get home about just after it started, and I watched it all evening, and this is where Greer, there was Steve Bassett, there was Peter Robbins, there was Gary Heseltine, lots of other people were giving an address in a mock-up of a congressional hearing involving former investigators from the Congress. And both of these events had moderate success. The first was hampered by 9/11, which happened a few months after it. But Steve Bassett was talking about how that there would be possibly another one at the United Nations. However, this is a different kind of press conference. This is one specifically related to nuclear weapons. Now, you may have read the book UFOs and Nukes. You may have watched the movie, the film that came with it. It's an interesting book that was self-published by, got the name of the author now, but the film is very, very interesting that goes with it. The organizer of this conference was Captain Robert Salas, U.S. Air Force retired. In 1967, he was in his missile launch bunker, and 60 feet underground near Malmstrom Air Force Base, where he basically had the duty, if ordered to, of launching the US's nuclear deterrent. There was some above on the surface. There was like these security guards, and they phoned down and they said, "Captain, there's some strange lights floating around the base." And he said, "Okay," but the moment he got that call, the nuclear missiles started shutting down. They literally started going offline. Now, that it took them quite a long time to get them back online as well. They couldn't actually work out, the engineers couldn't work out what went wrong with them. And there's many other stories like this. There's Dr. Robert Jacobs. Now, I met this guy. He's a really cool guy, Robert Jacobs. And he was actually operating a camera filming a test launch of a missile when his boss, Major Mansman, called him to the office and showed him the film a couple of days later and says, "What's all this? What's this?" And Jacob says, "That's a UFO, sir." And Mansman said, "You must never speak about this again." And Jacobs reported this story on the news several times. Philip Klass tried to get him cancelled. Dr. Jacobs was actually lecturing on journalism at a university, and yet Philip Klass phones up the dean and says, "You need to get rid of this man. He's a loony." This is before cancel culture was really heard of. But Major Mansman actually has been interviewed since then and has confirmed Bob Jacobs' story. I mean, there's many. The Russians have similar stories to tell. If there's one thing we can glean from all the UFOs' behavior across the board, I mean, they do many different things, but there's one recurring mode of behavior that they exhibit, and that is their interest in our nuclear weapons. And several people have thought, well, what's this all about? Does this mean that if it ever came to a point where we would start launching missiles at each other, the aliens would sort of catch them in mid-flight and put a stop to it? Obviously, I hope that's the case, and I think everybody would. However, that happy assumption may not be true, because if the aliens, for example, were planning to invade us Independence Day style, the first thing they would do is they would also take an interest in our nuclear deterrent, and probably we'd see exactly the same thing. So we don't really know what the motives of the aliens are for dealing with our nuclear deterrent. It could be benevolent or it could be malevolent. However, there's absolutely no doubt that non-human intelligences are taking an interest in nuclear weapons. And this press conference, was in the most prestigious National Press Club, organized by very, very sane people. Now, it's one thing to call you and me crazy, all right? And they do. They call us nuts, okay? And they can do that if they like. I don't care. But to call these men crazy is another thing entirely. I do ask the skeptics to think very carefully before they open their mouths and insult people and make fools of themselves. Because these men who were at this conference were, by the very definition of their job description, were very carefully vetted. They were very carefully screened. Their mental health was continuously monitored because it was of extremely high priority. Because if they got a screw loose, it would be the end of the world.
Even our case that we go back to time and time again, Rendlesham, it's got the nuclear element to it. You know, nukes that were being housed here that shouldn't have been here. This keeps on happening time and time again. It goes beyond some kind of just some statistical anomaly. The sci-fi person in me likes to think that, you know, one of these ancient civilizations that have been there, done it, seen it, they must realize that certain paths towards technological advancement do include, you know, nuclear type technology, and perhaps they've seen how it goes wrong. Perhaps there is somebody out there looking after us, and at the same time, perhaps there's other beasties out there that use these types of weapons against other planets. I don't know, Ben. I like to think that they're here looking after us in a way, making sure that the children don't go too mad and set fire to the playground that we're in, you know?
Fingers crossed, Kev, that is the case.
That's what I want to believe, but at the same time, they could be here looking at turning them off, and the motherships come in, dude. The motherships come in.
It could be, although I hope it's the former, like yourself. I hope it's the former. I mean, Carl Sagan actually said in the TV series Cosmos, which was, apart from the UFO debunking bit, it's a very, very good series. It's about the history of science. And he says, if I could meet one of these people, the first thing I'd ask them was, look, how did you do this? How did you develop to the level of technology you have without destroying yourselves with your own weapons? Because this technology always, as you just said, it inevitably leads to the ability of destruction as well as creation. How did you get through this adolescence, this civilization adolescence, without going down the destructive route?
Do you think how close we came during even something like the Cuban Missile Crisis, Ben? You know, it's unthinkable what could have happened. Just in the blink of an eye, it can happen, you know?
These weapons could literally kill most of the people in the world. It could devastate all of civilization and poison the earth for thousands of years. Yeah, absolutely. And if there are aliens out there who would put a stop to it, I mean, I like to believe we're masters of our own destiny, but I would happily swallow my pride and accept their help if they wanted to help. It's funny you mentioned the space, right? Yeah. Now, one thing that's very interesting about Bob Jacobs and his experience is that it's been revealed from other sources that the missile launch was part of another project. Some lunatic in the US government in the 60s had this plan to launch a rocket to the moon carrying a nuclear bomb and detonate that bomb on the moon. Perhaps they wanted to make a new crater and call it, and so that the astronomers could name it, I don't know, the NASA crater or the Oppenheimer crater or something, I don't know. But they wanted to do this. Now, if that's the case, then the very, very blatant and very obtrusive infiltration of artificial objects of non-human construction into this project early on is maybe given a message. It's given a message that says, we don't like you using these weapons. If you insist on using them, keep them on your own planet. Because that project was abandoned soon afterwards, and no nuclear bomb, luckily, has ever been detonated on the moon.
Yeah. Yet.
Not yet, yeah,
Not yet.
Exactly. No. Some idiot might try to do it. I mean,
it wouldn't surprise me. Again, at this point, nothing would surprise me, Ben.
Yeah.
You know, I do wonder as well if with more and more commercial type space rockets going up, industry opening up, if this is all just some kind of big catch-up program to get us ready. Not that people like me or you or people listening to this show need to be ready for the announcement. It's going to be obvious that we're not alone when space opens up just a little bit more, probably in our lifetime, maybe just beyond our lifetime, Ben. Maybe this is the catching the general public up to where we need to be, right?
It could be that this is another element of why the cover-up
Hold that
is
thought.
unsuspected.
Hold that thought. We'll be back in 3 minutes, folks. Don't go anywhere. There we go. And like I say, we'll be back in 3 minutes, folks. I'm going to go and grab a coffee.
That's a cliffhanger there, Kev.
It sure is. We'll come back on that on the other side. Don't go anywhere, folks. Wow, 119 on YouTube. Thank you very much for being here. Hit like, hit share, and hit the PayPal if you really care. Oh, I'm not joking. Well, I'm not joking. You know.
building.
Hour number 2 already on today's Kev Baker Show with Ben Emlyn-Jones, the hospital porter against the New World Order. Yes, indeedy. So, Ben, you left us with a right cliffhanger there. The music came in, it snatched you away. Do you want to pick it up where we left off?
Oh, let me remind you. What were we talking about?
I can't remember either. I went and got myself a nice cup of tea.
Oh, dear.
It's totally gone. I think we were on...
maybe someone in chat could remind us.
Was it like nuking the moon?
Yeah,
I see you were getting a lot of love from the YouTube audience today. You have to be one of my favourite guests with the audience, I must admit.
Oh, thanks, guys. I've been talking to them during the break in chat, and I appreciate them, all of them, for posting. I'm really sorry, but I had a really, really good reply I was going to give you for something. It was to do with we were talking about the press conference.
Yeah.
And they were going to launch a rocket up to the moon.
Yeah.
And
they were going to create a new crater. Yeah.
Yeah, and does anyone in chat remember what else we were talking about? What was I talking about? I'm sorry.
It's all good. It's all good, brother.
It'll come back to me, I'm sure.
It'll come back to us, right? Because we've got more UFO type news here before we move on and get into things like Yuri Geller, other weirdness that's out there as well. Sorry, Yuri, to say your name and weirdness together, but you get me. But
I'm sure he's used to that.
Back in the day, Ben, one of the topics, even pre-internet, I would suppose, Area 51. I think it's one of the places that I think everybody's heard of. Probably everybody's got a different opinion of as well. But I was quite interested when you had sent like an update, a new type image. What have we got going on, dude?
Now, this was completely new. This is something I'd never heard of before. Now, the person I've got to credit with this, there's two of them actually. There's a guy called Andrew Burlington, who is a researcher into what's known as the Area 51 alien interview, and a guy called John Stewart, they're working together to produce a book and a film about this. I know Stephen Campion's just done a video about this, which I haven't seen yet, but I know he takes a different view, so I'll take on board the points.
Not seen that one. I'll need to check that one out. But
yeah, but I've looked into this. It's a very interesting case. Now, so far, I've not seen any real serious evidence that discredits it. It's very different, for example, the alien autopsy. Sorry, Colin Wilford, which has been really, really very carefully studied, and a lot of its secrets have kind of fallen from the tree. This is very different. Nothing's really ever come out about it. But the idea is it's very similar to the Bob Lazar story. For example, there's supposedly an underground facility at Papoose Lake, just south of Homey Airport, which is the main Area 51 campus. Now, if you look at satellite images, and I've looked at them many, many times, I honestly can't see any evidence that there's anything strange there from the satellite images. Now, that's like the standard Google Earth ones. And indeed, many, many other people have made this point, which is why they doubt the idea that Bob Lazar is telling the truth, because even if there was an underground facility there would be something on the surface that revealed its presence. There would have to be some kind of entrance. There would need to be some method of providing ventilation to the underground base and also keeping it cool, because an underground building doesn't have access to outside air. It also could get very hot in there. So there would need to be a cooling facility. There'd be some kind of entrance. It would have to obey what's known as Sauder's laws. Now, this is a researcher called Dr. Richard Sauder, who's written several books about underground bases and about where they might be. There be things like a car park, for example, possibly nearby, things like that. And I was, up till now, I hadn't seen anything like that at Area 51. And then Andrew and John have been in touch, and I've been talking to them. And it appears that there is actually some very unusual structure at Area 51, which I think maybe needs further analysis. Although, of course, it's very difficult to do that. You can't actually get to that area very easily. One man did it, and I'll come to that in a minute, because a guy actually did manage to get to that location. It's really quite an extraordinary story. But you see, firstly, there's a road, a very, very small, narrow, single-track road that leads from the main north-south road at Area 51 between Indian Springs, which is where the border of Area 51 is at the south, and Homey Airport itself. There's a road that leads off to the west of that, and it crosses over the Papoose Hills to Papoose Lake. It's just a single track, but it's wide enough for the bus that Bob Lazar said he drove to work on every day from the airport. And it crosses the salt flat, which is what the lake is. It's not a real lake. These Groom Lake, Papoose Lake, they're actually salt flats. There's a row of what looks like milestones, possibly marking the location of the road. And it ends in a strange oval-shaped depression, what looks like a depression in the ground, and at one end of this depression is what looks like a tree. It's something green and fluffy. It's 40 feet across, and it's just odd. If it is a tree, it's the only plant of that particular variety which is in that area, because this is a desert land. There's lots of scrub and there's lots of other kinds of typical desert vegetation. A tree of this size, there's no other tree of that size for miles around. Which means it's either been planted there deliberately for some reason, or it may be a fake tree. We don't know, but it's the kind of thing that might be used to hide an entrance. Considering it's at the end of the road, this particular pathway that leads from the main Area 51 campus, then I think that's quite significant. Andrew and John have actually been studying this quite carefully, and it seems that this possibly could be the smoking gun we're looking for. We don't know. You can't see it very, very clearly. And it's worth bearing in mind that it would have been designed to be hidden from the very, very best satellites that the Soviet Union, later the Russian Federation, had available, because they would be continuously photographing this location. These are satellites far better than anything that you get on Google Earth. These are satellites which have a far greater resolution, more power. They're military, industrial spy satellites. So, but it could be that happens to be the entrance. Someone else has written to me saying, "Oh no, there's another entrance," and they've sent me this picture, and I don't know what it is exactly. And they've asked me not to publish it, and I'm not going to publish it. But this looks to me like it might be what we're looking for. And there's another piece of evidence comes from a man called Jerry Freeman. Now, Jeremy Riss, the alien scientist, has mentioned this guy, and he seems to, I think, has misinterpreted the story of Jerry Freeman, because he interprets the story of Jeremy Freeman to debunk the Bob Lazar story, because Jerry Freeman, believe it or not, did something incredibly daring. In 1997, he actually invaded Area 51. He sneaked into the secret base. And he's not a ufologist like us. He's not interested in aliens. He's a historian, and he's an archaeologist. And what he wanted to do was retrace the steps of what's known as the 49ers. Now, this was a wagon train, a group of pioneers who explored the area, went into unknown territory to get to California in the gold rush. And they're called that because they did the journey in 1849. And they traveled down the Tickaboo Valley past Groom Lake and Papoose Lake, and they camped at Papoose Lake. And he wanted to find their campsite and the inscription they left there. Jeremy said, there's no way this guy could have got as close as he did to the base. He also took a photograph of himself at Papoose Lake, and it's incredible. This is the only photograph that's ever been published from ground level within Area 51 at that location since at least 1955.
Fame, dude. That's a claim to fame right there. Yep.
It is. It's the only photograph ever published. You see the background. You can see the Papoose Hills. You can see the lake.
So what do you think?
Flat.
Do you think this is the smoking gun, as you called it? Do you think we're onto something here?
I honestly can't. I can't call this. Again, there's all sorts of uncertainty in all the things we deal with here. I wouldn't like to call it for certain unless I knew. But
what about Bob Lazar in general then? Where do you sit on him? He's a controversial character.
Yeah.
And I look at both sides of the debate. What do you think?
Well, every time I'm about to denounce him as a fake, because the people like Jeremy Riss, the people who have criticized him, have done so. They've done a lot of dedicated research, and they make some very good points.
Yep.
But every time I'm about to sort of say, okay, he is a fake, something happens, something comes up to make me doubt that. So, this is one of those occasions. See, Jerry Freeman, when he camped during the day, because he could only travel at night. He camped during the day at the southern end of Papoose Lake. He didn't actually get he only got to within about 2.5 miles of where Bob Lazar said the base was. And he was waiting for the moon to rise because he traveled by moonlight. And he said he heard strange noises coming from the other end of the lake. He said he felt a rumbling sound like an earthquake, and he saw lights appearing, and he thought they might be hangar doors opening and closing. He saw movement as if there were lit vehicles moving around. This is from a guy who is not in the least bit interested in aliens. He's a historian. He's interested in the history of the United States and the wagon trains of the 19th century. That's his passion. That's what he risked his life for, getting into Area 51. He managed to dodge security. I mean, he knows that country very, very well. He knows how to survive, make sure he has enough water and things like that. And he managed to dodge security and get deep within Area 51. And he got out again, and he lived to tell the tale. It's quite incredible. But, where I disagree with alien scientists is I think, if anything, Jerry Freeman's story supports Bob Lazar's testimony. And indeed, this new evidence from Andrew and John, I think, again, is very, very, it's very telling. I think it lends credibility. It's not proof, but it lends a possibility that we have seen that maybe that this facility, this S4 facility at Papoose Lake, which is alleged to lie under the surface of the ground, does obey Sauder's laws. In terms of there being an entrance and a road, an access road. So we'll see where this goes, Kev. I'm curious to find out.
Is there any other corroborating whistleblower type things from Area 51? Is there anyone else that speaks about that place that you look into more?
There was a guy who flew SR-71 spy planes. What's his name? He's I'll just find out his name.
That's what I love about Ben. He's like a Rolodex of all these cases and names.
I'm not going to pretend I have a photographic memory here, but
near enough.
It's just he was very, very interesting. He actually did. I know I'm a bit of an anorak. I know. His name. He's a pilot, and his name is Captain David Fruhoff. And he flew the SR-71 Blackbird in the 60s. And he has spoken out, backing up Bob Lazar and some of the story. He says some of the things, the anecdotes that Bob Lazar reveal indicates that he had to have been at Area 51. So that's very interesting that someone like him, he obviously, again, a very professional, highly trained, sensible man, not a ufologist, is saying, well, maybe Bob Lazar was for real. It's I don't know that for sure, but it's very interesting. And this is a guy who's put in charge of a super secret spy plane. It was indeed secret for the first 15 or 20 years of its existence, a very highly sophisticated plane. It looks very modern. But it actually was built in the late 1950s, years ahead of its time, and he was one of the guys chosen to fly it.
Yeah, and again, I think there's a vast underground facility at somewhere like Area 51, but it's not the only one, Ben. These underground bases, and of course with compartmentalization, I mentioned that earlier on. So few people really know the full spectrum of things that's known, that's been worked on, that are ours, that are not ours, It's really hard to kind of put the jigsaw together.
There's a lot of focus on Area 51, as Area 51, I think, symbolizes this black budget world.
We agree, though, I think, though, Wright Patterson Air Force Base is probably even more interesting, right?
Yeah, in fact, we've spoken so often, you anticipate exactly what I was going to say, yes. If anything, Wright-Patterson Air Force Base is, even though it's less famous than Area 51 and receives less attention...
I think that's deliberate. I must admit, I think that's deliberate,
It could be. It actually deserves to be more well-known. There's a very, very good book. In fact, she's written 2 books about it. Dr. Irina Scott has written about her own experience of Wright-Pat. And we know, for example, that when the Roswell incident happened in 1947, one of the last reports we heard in the mainstream media, before the subject was then just quashed and the fake weather balloon story was put out, was that the debris from Roswell, it had been taken to Fort Worth, Texas, and from there had been then shipped to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, to the technical data section there. So that's where you always send foreign material that has landed in the United States and territories. which indicates it wasn't a weather balloon. It was not Project Mogul. If they're sending it to the technical data section, it's something foreign. And by foreign, it could be a Russian plane or something, or it could be something slightly more exotic.
Where do you reckon they would take that in the UK, bearing in mind the story of Pentic, the kind of recovery that may have taken place there? Where do you suspect that would go?
Boscombe Down. Boscombe Down in Wiltshire is it's very similar to Area 51. It's a highly secretive test flight centre, but it also does other. Yeah, it's probably Boscombe Down. My guess is. It's in Wiltshire, not far from Miles Johnston. So I'm sure he takes
Boscombe Down. That's got a nice ring to it, man.
Yeah.
It's got a good ring.
Let's get a hashtag going. Storm Boscombe Down.
We'll probably get picked up by the police for inciting a protest, man. You never know.
Yeah.
Yeah. So listen, I had mentioned Yuri Geller. We're shifting gears, kind of, sort of, because I also mentioned remote viewing earlier on in the show when we were talking aliens. When I hear about remote viewing, I think the men that stare at goats. I think of all that good stuff. And one character that comes up time and time again, and I remember him from my childhood, this crazy dude that was claiming and running around saying he could bend spoons everywhere. Yuri Geller. We've talked about him a good few times already, Ben. But what on earth Yuri been up to now? What's going on?
This is a very, very strange story that actually came out in the Daily Star. Yuri Geller, as you know, as you just described, he's something of a psychic celebrity.
I hold this man responsible for England beating us in the Euro 96. He flew over Wembley. He wished England would win. I hold him personally responsible.
Well, he keeps claiming this. He said he says some rather strange things. He said he manipulated the footballs with his mind during the Euro 96, and indeed in the Euro 21 it's just gone. In which case, why didn't he help them win? I mean, the final was on such a nail bite. It was on penalties, and of course England lost to Italy. Well, he obviously didn't do a very good job, did he? So
listen, Ben. There's some things in the universe that are constant. And England and their hearts getting broken at penalties is one of them. It's fixed,
It's a curse, actually, for the England football team. It really is. And I feel terrible for them. I don't. For them. I do.
I don't.
No, I know you don't. As a Welshman, I do.
I'm only joking.
I bet you don't. Yeah, of course not. Yeah, but Geller, though, he is essentially a showman, and he's very, very famous. And he began his career. He first came to attention in the early 1970s when he was on TV in the United States, because of calling himself a paranormalist and his ability to perform various what looked to me like magic tricks. And indeed, he developed several critics at the time, such as Bill Nye and James Randi, who said, "Look, this guy's just doing magic tricks. He's not a real psychic. He's just doing magic tricks and pretending to have supernatural powers." However, the thing about it is that he came to the attention of the Stanford Research Institute, and he was the subject of a very, very famous experiment, which involved people such as Ingo Swann and several other interesting people. Ingo Swann is a very, very interesting character indeed. And he was experimented on by two guys who led the experiment, Russell Targ and Hal Puthoff. Yes, the same Hal Puthoff from TCSA. And you can see the photos and videos that were made. He's there. He's a young chap. And he's sitting there. He's very easily recognizable, talking to Geller and doing these various experiments on him. Now, what Geller said happened after that is very interesting, because formerly his life went on as a stage psychic or magician, and he went on TV. He got into lots of conflicts with James Randi. There were several lawsuits, all kinds of things like that. He became very rich and successful doing what he did on the TV. But he said he was living a double life. Now, he never admitted this till 2013. He said it privately to John Ronson in 2004. However, that's a British journalist who wrote the book you mentioned, The Men Who Stare at Goats. In fact, it was actually this book that Ronson actually revealed this in. So he said he told John Ronson privately. And he says in the book, if you repeat this or you put it in your book, I will simply deny it. And Ronson put it in the book, and Geller did. Yet in 2013, Geller said, all this time he was on TV, he was living this double life as a remote viewer for the CIA and for Mossad. He even said he was a spy during the Arab-Israeli conflict over Sinai and things like that. And what's funny is that the CIA apparently, now they claimed, what this news article claims is the CIA have confirmed this. Now, I went to the CIA's website. I used the search function for their declassified files. It's something I'm quite used to. I've Googled Roswell and UFOs so many times on the CIA website, you wouldn't believe it. I couldn't find any reference to Yuri Geller on there. So it's not in their own house publications. So the actual source, I'm having trouble finding a source for this particular news story. But it literally says, the Daily Star say, Yuri Geller's psychic powers were real. The CIA has admitted it, but they said that apparently the CIA said the phenomena is too unreliable and inconsistent for useful intelligence purposes, and the agency shelved the operation. But I don't believe that for a moment.
I don't believe that. Just because for the potential of, for lack of a better term, a super remote viewer come along. You know, somebody that is 100% accurate. They can see behind enemy lines. Dang, they can see into the future, you know?
A lot's been written about this. I mean, John Ronson only scratches the surface, and his book is actually quite disappointing. It was made into a documentary and then into a rather cringy film with George Clooney.
Cheesy movie,
Yes.
man, yeah.
It's a comedy. It's quite funny, but it doesn't really – it's really a very serious subject. And there's actually a much better documentary come out called Third Eye Spies, which reveals that during the Cold War not just the United States, but the Russians as well were using this. I mean, they didn't know how it worked. They didn't believe in this sort of thing because they were good communists. But if something works, they're going to use it. If it can be used as a weapon of war, they will use it. It doesn't care. It doesn't matter whether they know how it works or anything. And they did a lot of experiments about this. I know Alien Scientist has covered this as well, and he's claimed this is some massive disinformation exercise. But based on the complexity and the details, I can't agree with him. I think there is some reality behind this. And for all we know, it's still going on. And
you mentioned the work of Ingo Swann, right? I mean, legendary within this kind of field. Ed Dames as well. I mean, they've worked with the police on missing persons cases, and so I definitely think there's something to it. I must admit. Does that mean that everyone that claims they can do it are able to do so? No. But I do think at the heart of this, there's definitely something in there. Yeah,
there really is. Now, Ed Dames is interesting because he went freelance when he left the CIA. And
do you ever leave the CIA?
Well, yes. Does anyone ever leave the CIA?
Exactly.
That's the question.
A phone call away, my friend. Yeah.
But he started doing private courses in remote viewing, and indeed other people have, including a chap called Tony Toppin, who I think we both know. And I've actually been on his course, and I have to say, I was quite surprised with what I did. I mean, I don't consider myself psychic. I don't think I have. I'm not a medium or anything like that. But I did get some quite good results from the course. Oh.
Well, I'm kind of taken aback there, man. I'm sitting here, so you are. I mean, I couldn't do it. There's no way I could quieten my brain down to do something like that. But I'm quite interested to hear how you got on. This is quite good.
Well, it comes with practice. Tony, I've done this he's done a few of these courses actually, and I did one. The first time I did it was actually at the High Wycombe Paranormal Group. He did a course there, and he basically just you have like a form to fill in, and then you go through a process where you have to identify a certain picture. Which is completely sealed off, and you have to make very, very quick notations as you're going along and thinking of it. And I did get some quite good results, and so did several other people. Now, it's something actually that does come with practice. So even if you think you can't do it, and if you try it a couple of times and you don't get very good results, you can sometimes learn how to do it. Some people are able to get better results if they continue and persevere with it. He's actually he gave me this. This is actually this DVD, he actually gave me this. I don't know if you can see it.
Yep.
This is actually the course. It's basically the PowerPoint and everything else that goes with the course. And you'll sell you them for it's just a couple of pounds, and you could practice at home. I think what Tony does and what Ed Dames do is it's just a tiny little probably sliver of what's going on behind the scenes, where you can imagine they've got all the money in the world from the black budget. And Ronson discovered, there is a lot of this sort of thing goes on. There was the goat lab and things like that, where they were literally trying to stop the hearts of goats. And that means it's not just like reconnaissance and intelligence. This is actually used for attack.
Psychic assassins, man. Yeah.
They thought if you can stop the heart of a goat, you can stop the heart of an enemy soldier.
Who knew that Yuri Geller was charging about like something out of the Bourne Identity? Who knew? See?
Yeah.
But we're right on the break, Ben. I think we're right on the break. Let me check there. I think we are. Before we launch into anything else, yes,
nearly there. I don't want to sort of forget. I must make a note of something.
There you go. See, we'll be back on the other side. Don't go anywhere, folks. There we go. Yes, indeed. 3 short minutes, ladies and gentlemen. Wow, Ben Emlyn-Jones knocking it out the park as usual. We'll be back in a moment. Don't go anywhere. Final segment coming up.
So what are you going to do about it? Nothing? Sweet Fanny Adams, is it?
Wow, there's 131 people on YouTube. Dang, this is more popular than Freaky Friday. Ben Emlyn-Jones, man. Telling you, dude, you've got your own posse come with you, man. This is awesome.
I recognise some of the names actually of people, because I know there's some people who are interested in all the things I do, and they often listen in when I'm on other people's shows. So thanks to all those who have followed me here. I appreciate that.
Absolutely top notch, folks. Hit like, hit share. One more segment to go. Welcome back, and unfortunately it's the final segment of today's show with Ben. Emlyn-Jones. Man, what a start to the day I had, ladies and gentlemen. Did you all know that there was an earthquake swarm in Scotland today? Yes,
Oh, man.
indeed. I got shaken out of my bed. I was rudely awoken. I'm only joking, folks. I managed to sleep through all of it. But I believe the epicenter was about 88 miles from Glasgow. I was hoping that this would be the start of some kind of Project Bluebeam type event where, you know, maybe Sturgeon had done a deal with one of these globalists that were over for the COP and they'd unleashed the earthquake machine and out of the sea would rise an Atlantean artifact. But no, just an earthquake swarm. And hey, listen, we live in a very global world right now. What if I was to tell you over 40 people reported this, not to the British Geological Survey. No. No, they phoned up the USGS, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, we live in a very American world. And not only is it Halloween and all that proms and all that stuff made its way over the Atlantic, the USGS as well. So yeah, there you go, Ben. Earthquakes in Scotland, man. It's not unheard of, but you know what's ironic? On Sunday, I was doing a live stream, and our good friend Donnie from Down Under, Aboriginal man, and our Uncle Donnie was asking me about the fault lines. What fault lines we have in Scotland, and of course I was pointing to the Great Glen, one of the biggest fault lines. Little did I know that within 48 hours, there would actually be earthquakes in Scotland, so I'm blaming Donnie. Yes, Donnie in Australia, it's your fault. There you go.
Yeah, maybe it was the Dreamtime spirits who did it. You never know.
Definitely wasn't Sturgeon anyway, and there's no Atlantis risen out of the sea. So.
Yeah. That's a shame because that would be a great topic for the show, wouldn't it?
It would have been. And people are probably thinking, Kev, you're making that up. No. Parts of Western Scotland rattled by a small earthquake in the middle of the night, and more than 40 people reported to the USGS that they felt the tremor as far away as Edinburgh and Ballycastle in Northern Ireland. So yeah, there you go. It's where that wee star is. And of course, I'm in Smart City, Glasgow. The Data Dome had us protected here. Yeah, that's what it was.
We are lucky to live in a part of the world where there are not serious earthquakes and volcanoes and things like that. I mean, like the people on La Palma, we were talking about the La Palma and the Canary Islands on a previous show.
Still going strong, eh?
It's still, the volcano is still erupting. There's still earthquakes. But of course, they do happen. I mean, they're regular earthquakes in this country, and most of them you can't feel. They're too small to actually be detected. But sometimes there is a sensation that comes with them. I've heard this never happened to me, but I've heard people say, yeah, there was a bit of the ground was shaking a bit, and it does happen. So it's whether it's actually possible to induce these things artificially, I don't know. I know that a large underground explosion will create a shockwave, and indeed geologists do this to scan the underground world using echolocation and things like that. So they set off a large explosion in a coal mine or something, and then they pick up the vibrations hundreds of miles away from where it was actually detonated. And so whether that could actually cause people are always saying that they have weapons that could do this. Some people are saying that the whole La Palma thing is being staged to cause a collapse, a landslide, and a mega tsunami. I've not seen any evidence to suggest that's the case, but
same.
If it's true, obviously I hope not, because it would be the most awful weapon of war. It'd be like the weather. It would be similar to weather control, which can be done. That actually can be done. Weather can be controlled to a certain extent.
I reckon this thing will be going until December, though. Then I was looking at an article the other day. When you look over like a 1,000-year period, we're just in one of these uptick type periods of time. Shouldn't be surprised it's happening now. Everything's happening now, right?
There's a good YouTube channel if you're interested in this sort of thing called GeoBeck, and it's hosted by a young woman. I think she's a student, but she knows a lot about geology, and she talks about volcanoes and things like that. And she talked about the Icelandic volcano that erupted a few months ago. Interesting stuff. I've watched what she said about this La Palma one. I'll have to go and check her channel out.
Yeah, big time. Of course, the sun, the solar flare aspect of thing as well. We've had a few solar flares coming in lately. And I find that interesting because a lot of people keep an eye on the sun. But it wasn't that long ago that we had a TV show again over here in the UK called Cobra. And it was dealing specifically with a geomagnetic storm that takes out the grid. Something like the Carrington event. And of course, if something like the Carrington event happened now with our electronics and the way things are with life today and the technology we have, that could be a big spanner in the works if it ever happened, you know?
Considering how dependent we are on electronics now. I mean, in 1858, when the Carrington event happened, they were telegraph cables, but these were quite primitive. Most people didn't have electricity. Domestic electricity hadn't come in yet, it actually did completely damage these cables really badly. Today, of course, we are dependent on these very sort of things. So, yeah, a massive solar flare would do a lot of damage to power. It would do a lot of damage to communications. Billions and billions of pounds worth of damage. It could mean we wouldn't be able to talk to each other. We wouldn't be able to do this show until it had been repaired. God knows how long that could take. You can actually prepare for things like this because if you just reduce the power on the grid, for example, you can protect it from overloading caused by these kinds of activity from the sun. However, it's possible we might get as little as 8 hours notice because these solar flares travel very fast, a significant proportion of the speed of light. It can get from the sun to the Earth within 8 hours. So to coordinate that across the entire world would be very, very difficult. But there are apparently people working on it. I wish them luck. I really do. Interestingly, the behavior of the sun is often a predictor of the weather, so it's difficult to know what's going to happen. But I know that Piers Corbyn is saying that it could be pretty cold this winter. I think was it Piers Corbyn?
I think we're due a cold one. I mean, in the UK, we're used to cold winters, don't get me wrong, but it feels like we haven't had a right bad one in a while, do you know what I mean?
Oh, Piers Corbyn, I mean, he's been focusing his attention at the moment on this disease that I won't mention that's sweeping the Earth at the moment, but his speciality is meteorology. And he's a very, very harsh critic of, for example, COP26.
He's awesome when it comes to long-term forecasting. I remember that was like the big thing with, was it weather action, you call it?
Yeah, he has been pretty good, and he goes by the activity of the sun because the sun has a huge effect on the Earth's climate, and we've just come out of a very, very deep, long solar minimum because the sun goes through an 11-year cycle of sunspot activity and radiation emission. So during the solar maximum, there's a huge number of solar flares. A lot of X-rays get flung out into space. A lot of particles get released. During the solar minimum, the sun calms down. We're emerging out of a very, very deep, long solar minimum indeed. And this could indicate climate change. It could be an indicator that climate change is real and it's going to happen. However, it actually would most likely cause a drop in the Earth's temperature rather than a rise. And that is significant because all the current climate change alleviation measures are geared towards a warmer world, not a colder world. So basically, they're going in exactly the opposite direction.
Well,
if Corbyn is right,
we need our cold winters, man, or else we'll just get too confused if it gets warm during winter. That won't be good.
We just got to make the best of it. We've survived before, Polar bears have survived before. All this idea that polar bears are going to disappear. They've lived through warm spells. They've lived through cold spells.
Man, they're bringing back the woolly mammoth.
That's incredible. They're cloning the mammoth. I mean, I don't know if it's actually it's a bit cruel to do that. Because a baby mammoth would be completely alone in the world, and elephants are very sort of sentimental creatures. They have to have their loved ones around them, and a big woolly elephant might not be accepted by other elephants.
I was actually reading the other day as well that you're getting more and more elephants now that are born without tusks.
Well, that could be evolution because they're the ones that don't get targeted by the poachers.
Yep.
And I hope so because elephants are an endangered species and they're lovely creatures and it would be so sad for them to vanish. There are only 2 species left. There used to be over 110. So what I'd like actually to maybe the measures and the resources that are going to be put into bringing the mammoth back through cloning could be put into protecting the 2 extant species of the Elephantidae family.
Female African elephants evolved to lose tusks due to the poaching.
That's it. The ones without the smaller tusks are the ones that have the babies, and the babies have smaller tusks. It's natural selection. Yeah. I just if it can stop people killing them, that would be wonderful. I mean, it's awful.
It's going to get like Jurassic Park soon, Ben, if they have their way, man. They'll be bringing back the dinosaurs next.
That would be fun, wouldn't it?
We've seen how that goes. We've seen how that goes.
Oh, I love these films. How do we get from earthquakes to elephants in such a short space of time?
Because it's the Kev Baker show, and that's what we're famous for here. Nobody knows where we go. It's the blind leading the blind on a good day. So, Ben, you're going out on the talking tour again soon. What other conferences are you looking forward to going back to now that they're all opening back up, man?
Oh, so far there's just this one so far. But if anyone wants to book me to appear at an event that you're hosting, I could do online talks, or I can actually travel to see it. I don't charge any money for my presence. If you can cover my transport costs, I'd be grateful though. And I might have to stay overnight, so just put me up on a settee if you like in someone's house. That's fine with me.
We don't really have as big a speaking tour as you get in America, right?
It's not. The scene is slightly different here. It's there are a number of conferences. It's smaller scale than you get in America. The American conferences, and I'd love to go to one. It's one of my ambitions to go to the International UFO Congress. I know that Miles and Colin, they go there every time. I'd love to go with them one year, and I'd really love to do that. But we have things such as the Probe Conference, which has now stopped. But there's Miles does some brilliant conferences for the Basis Project. And there's several others. There's LAPIS, the Lancashire Anomalous Phenomena Investigation Society. They do a conference every year. And they're going to do one next year. So I'm going to go to that. I've not been invited to speak, but I'm going to go and listen. It's actually quite nice not to go to one without speaking, because I can kind of relax. If you're speaking, it's kind of a working trip, and you've got to do a lot of preparation and have it at the back of your mind. You know what I mean? You can't really have fun. Well, you can have fun at a speaking conference, but it's a different kind of fun. If you're not speaking, you just put your feet up and chill out.
That's where I would be, wearing a fake beard, sunglasses so people don't recognize, asking questions and all that. But listen, one thing I did mean to ask you about, I should really have thrown it onto the disclosure pile, but we're getting close to Christmas over here. And of course, the advertising campaigns are underway. John Lewis, they're always one of the best. What is going on with their latest one, dude?
I was hoping you'd bring this up, Kev. I meant to. Now, these supermarket Christmas ads, we all know them. They're like mini works of art, aren't they? I mean, they're very high budget. They're technically sophisticated. They're like little feature films. They tell a story. There's often laughter. There's often tears. They're supposed to spread Christmas cheer. They actually usually begin in early November, and everyone sort of wonders, what's the ad going to be like this time? What's it going to be what's it going to be about? And as soon as the ad appears, you get all kinds of people analyzing it for propaganda. Sometimes they say it's too politically correct. Sometimes they say there's fear propaganda in it, like the one last year has Santa dying of a particular disease, and things like that. That's disturbing and fearful. Now, this year's John Lewis advert is by far the most remarkable one I've ever seen. When I watched it, I thought, blimey. It's very short, like it's only a couple of minutes long, as these things, but it's all about a young boy who's riding on a bus one day just before Christmas, and the decorations everywhere, and he sees this trail of multicolored smoke across the sky, and something crashes in the woods. He goes into the woods to see what has crashed, and yes, it is indeed an alien spacecraft. And oddly enough, it looks very much like the description Larry Warren gives of the Capel Green spaceship, which is very interesting. I don't know how they got that idea.
Well, I got the whole Rendlesham feel with the forest and stuff, so I was yeah.
Well, that I think is that I don't think is accidental. Either they got the idea from the Capel Green trailer or something like that. I don't know, but
what's
it looks
happened
just
with
like the one in
Capel
the
Green, dude? What's happened with that? I know I've interrupted you.
There's a new ad just come out. There's a new trailer just been released for Capel Green. I just posted it on social media, just literally during one of the breaks.
Hot off the press. Nice.
Yeah, it is. It's still an active project, so it'll appear at some point. But I mean, it's really amazingly how closely this particular craft resembles the Capel Green ad. And that doesn't mean Dion Johnson is putting in a bit of viral marketing. I don't think he knows anything about it. But what's it is and guess what? There is an alien there. There's this young alien, a female Nordic alien, which distinctly, obviously humanoid, but distinctly alien in feature. And the boy flees. He runs home in terror, but he can't stop thinking about what he's just seen. So he goes back to the crash site, and he approaches this alien girl, and they sort of start communicating, and he introduces her to Christmas time festive things on planet Earth. He shows her Christmas tree lights, mince pies, snowball fighting, and then he goes back the third time, and the ET female has repaired her damaged spacecraft, and it's capable of flight. And then there's this very poignant moment where he suddenly realizes he's made a new friend, and she's going to have to leave him. It's a bit like E.T. the Extraterrestrial, Steven Spielberg's film. They say goodbye. He gives her a present, and she kisses him, and then she sort of looks up tearfully in the sky as this spaceship flies up into the air. It's the music is Together in Electric Dreams, Giorgio Moroder's music score. But it's a cover version, a very mellow cover version of that, and it just makes me. It's rather, what it reminded me of? That UNICEF ad about the little alien boy at a school. Have you seen that?
Yeah, I've seen that one. Yeah.
Marciano, an unexpected friend, which tells the story. It's similar. A little alien or an ET hybrid is enrolled at a school with normal children, and they look at him really strange, and they tease him and they bully him, and little by little he becomes their friend. He wins their respect, and they accept him. And this is similar. It has this very emotionally charged narrative, a lot of very, very highly sentimental imagery and things like that. And it just makes you wonder what they're trying to say to us, because propaganda does this. Propaganda, fiction intended to promote certain serious real-world ideas into the consumer's minds, often takes the form of something emotional rather than logical. Propaganda tends to be like, it tends to arouse our feelings rather than our thoughts. It doesn't try to persuade us, it tries to make us feel a certain way. And very often these things do target children. These are often aimed at children. They feature children so that young children who watch this will identify with the characters, especially the young boy. He's about 8 years old. He's just a lad walking in the woods, and then this alien's here. It's things like that. This sort of thing could happen to any human child. So I don't know why they came up with this particular idea for an alien landing and human contact on this particular ad, but I find it interesting they've done this at this particular time within our history, when the idea of extraterrestrials and what they contain in terms of biological entities has become more acceptable within our society.
Yep, you're right. Of course.
So I wonder what the other ads will be like. What will the Tesco's one be like? You see, I haven't seen that one yet, but
if we see a spate of aliens, we know we can do a show on it. Yeah. Anything nice planned for Christmas, Ben? Since the next time we talk will be December.
Oh God, it will. Yes. Well, it's probably going to be just an average one. I'll be seeing my family and things like that, and I'll be relaxing and I will, though, do some videos, and I will certainly try to keep in touch with people. I'm going to go to Miles's Christmas pageant, so I'll hopefully have a chance to see as many people as possible before the end of the year. I'm very much looking forward to that. What about you, Kev? What are you doing? It means Christmas,
I may
New Year?
be going up north for New Year. Fingers crossed. We'll see how it plays out. But yeah, I love this time of year, dude. I like the dark nights. The gets dark earlier. I don't know. I like the summer as well. Don't get me wrong, but I love Christmas. Love the build up to it. And she's somebody who gets the Christmas tree out really early as well. It goes away really late. It's our boy's 19 now. It's not half the fun it was when he was just little. And for anyone out there who does have a young child, make the most of it, folks, because they grow up way too quickly. Way too quickly. Yeah. And it gets more and more expensive every year as well, I'm just saying.
Yeah. But it's lovely. New Year's a big thing in Scotland, isn't it? It's
not as much as it used to be, dude, I must admit.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, it's still way different from what you guys have down in England, but compared to when I was growing up, when I was younger, yeah, there's been a big difference.
The first footing and things like that.
Yeah, that's kind of like they still do that up in the Highlands and things, but it's a dying tradition, you know, bringing in the lump of coal, the tall dark stranger being the first one over the doorstep and all that good stuff. Yeah.
But you know about I think we talked about this on a previous show, but it's actually happened in Glasgow on Govan Road. There's a group of people first footing in 1966, and one of them just disappeared. He went missing. It's really quite a really strange story, Kev. It's
I'll need to find that one and go over it on a show or a stream. That sounds like it's definitely.
His name was Alec Cleghorn. He was disappeared and he's never come back. And it was a real David Paulides type thing. You know, people just looked the other way, they turned around and he was gone. And no one knows what happened to him. But he was out first footing with his friends. And it was. I actually went to the location when I came up in 2016 to the conference in 2016. I walked along the Govan Road. I don't know exactly where it was on the Govan Road this happened because it's quite a long road. It's quite a long, busy road.
Massive, yeah.
But I walked along Govan Road and I did a little video about it because it's scary that these things happen. That people just almost evaporate into nothing instantly. And no one knows where they go, where he is, or what. It's like the missing 411.
Yep. Some of those cases are just truly bizarre, right? The national forests and things like that. I love getting into some of those cases, man. They're really weird.
They're disturbing and as well. I mean, they're alarming things. I mean, I'm interested in them, and I mean, it's quite scary. Like these little kids that just go missing under their parents' noses, and of course the parents are then suspects in murder. They're murder suspects, you know. And indeed, the police they suspected the friends of Alec Cleghorn of conspiring to get rid of him. They did this with Travis Walton, you know, because what do you expect the police to say? I mean, if you tell the police, oh, he just vanished they're going to say, come off it. What's really going on here?
Exactly.
You know, because they have to investigate, don't they? And the last people to see the person before they disappeared are the prime suspects.
No, you're absolutely correct, dude. You're absolutely correct. And we'll need to do a show on some of like that Govan one, the missing 411 cases.
Yeah.
That's definitely a show waiting to happen. Let people know who you've got coming on your show coming up, Ben. And again, remind people how they can keep up to date with everything you do.
Well, I have a couple of guests planned. Reeves Cook, a paranormal investigator, is going to be on my show in a couple of weeks. I've got my show tomorrow evening at 8 p.m. It's just going to be a solo show, but it should be fun. I have my website, of course, is Hospital Porters Against the New World Order and all its various forms. That's my YouTube channel there, Ben the J.R. Porter.
Is this you planning on like starting a GoFundMe so you can go and get frozen for eternity?
Oh, no, it's not. But if you watch, you might find that video on Cryonics quite interesting because I just think it's remarkable. There are people who are like freezing them. They're freezing their own dead bodies. Yeah. In the hope that they could come back, they'd be revived in the futures. Well, it's a fascinating thing.
The company we looked at was hysterical. On one of their web pages, it was 100% fatal because they haven't sussed out how to bring you back yet. And I thought I probably wouldn't use that as a selling point. I'd probably bury that somewhere down the web page a bit.
They must have some ghoulish jokes, these people, because they store them in these vats of liquid nitrogen. I mean, I don't know if it would work or not. I mean, it's
I get the idea. I mean, I get it. You know, if you want to cheat whatever it is, maybe you think in the future there's going to be a cure for whatever you've got. I get it. I'm with you, Ben. I don't know.
It's very expensive, you know. And I mean, I happen to believe we have an afterlife anyway. I can't prove that. It's not 100%, but I think I'm confident enough to roll the dice and spend the £80,000 it costs on something else, even if I had £80,000, which I don't.
Exactly, dude. 80 grand, man. I wouldn't be going and freezing myself with it, that's for sure.
If anyone wants to read my book, this is Roswell disappeared behind the Tesla Tower there. Roswell Rising, a novel of disclosure. If you like this program, you'll like this book, and there's the 2 sequels that come with it afterwards. So make sure you get a copy of that, because honestly, you will. If you like Kev Baker's program, if you like the Kev Baker show, I think this book will suit you because it goes in. It's just a story. It's a novel, but it goes into some of the very, very same subjects we talk about. And it asks the crucial question: what would happen if we got the truth instead of lies?
What world would we be living in now, folks?
Oh, very different, as you'll find in the pages of this book. It's a speculative vision of a future world. Yeah.
One day, Ben, we'll be coming on here and we'll be talking about post-disclosure. Where do we go now?
Well, you know, why not? I mean, some futurists are very accurate. Arthur C. Clarke is one of the best. I mean, he used in the 1950s and 60s, he was writing about the future, and some of his predictions have come true. We have satellites which we use as communication.
Oh, it's
and things
uncanny,
like that.
dude. You can go. I mean, you've probably watched it. There's a video of him back in the day. He lays it all out. Folks, we're out of here. Wherever you are, make it TFR. There we go. Now, Ben, I want to thank you. I want to thank everyone for tuning in as well. We've had over 1,000 souls visit the stream throughout the 2 hours we've been on. That is absolutely phenomenal. No bots included. Yes, and Ben's got his own posse over there. I think the KBS posse, they always love a night with Ben. Can't thank you enough, bro. I'm just going to shove on some tunes and then we'll get out of here. I'll let you say
Thanks,
your goodbye
Marty.
to the audience.
Post the links.
Yeah.
Thank you, Marty, for posting the links. Yeah.
Marty is a godsend, I'm telling you. If I ever make it big, she's going to be my social media manager. She's on it. So we are out of here, folks. Keep it real.
Thank you.